Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bear Business Podcast with me, Chris Barnard from feedbackfans.com. Today my guest is founder of Interim Digital, Ginny Nicholls, and we look at how their unique business model is helping brands, agencies and freelancers build modern beneficial relationships. Ginny, hi. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be talking about your business today, Interim Digital, which I believe is revolutionising the way that agencies and brands partner with freelancers. So would you like to just give our listeners a bit of background on your journey to this point and what led you to create Interim Digital?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Chris. It sounds quite nice when you say it like that. I've only ever really read those words, so to actually hear someone else say them is quite nice. Makes us sound like we know what we're doing. So Interim was born out of a recognition of a very different landscape in the digital marketing world post-COVID. So pre-COVID, obviously there was the freelance makeup and pool of freelancers, and there were digital agencies using and partnering with freelancers. But with the revolution in the remote working that came as a byproduct of COVID, and unfortunately in some instances things like redundancies, furloughs, etc., the landscape changed by way of a lot more senior level freelancers being in the pool. So people who have worked at digital agencies or brands who have been at maybe head of PPC, head of SEO, director of search, or those kind of titles, who are now in the freelancer pool. And on the flip side, a lot of the smarter agencies or more agile agencies took COVID as a bit of an opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, do we need to re-recruit all of these people post-COVID and re-add those line items of cost to our monthly outgoings? Or do we take a little bit of a smarter approach, really double down and focus on the individuals who are in our four walls already and partner with experts in the delivery arms of what we do? So a lot more brands and agencies. We work predominantly, I say about 95% with agencies at the moment, but looking to expand more into brands, who took that view were then looking for the specific freelancers to help. Unfortunately, finding freelancers can be pretty tricky. So what we're trying to do, and the headache we try and take away, is by building this community of excellent ex-agency, pre-vetted, minimum 5-year experience channel experts. When agencies do come to us in that moment of panic and requirement of extra resource, we've got the guys and girls at hand ready to go. So we've been in market for about 3 years now, operating as the community model. It was just me and a couple of other freelancers 3 years ago, and now we've got over 100 of us in the community. So far, so good.
I love that you're trying to solve this problem, because this has been a problem that's been known for a long time, both client side and agency land. And a big bugbear for clients has been, with my agency, they are changing staff, and there's good reasons for that. But from the brand level, it's frustrating because you often get to a point where you are feel you are partnering, feel you have a great understanding or a great relationship, and then you lose that person. So I can see how it solves that. But you're also solving that problem what is historically known for freelancers. I'm not sure if it's a problem that's deemed to have got worse or got better, actually, Ginny. We'll have to take your insight on that, in that getting freelancers, historically unreliable, like web developers, I would say. So very much, one of the reasons we went into web development was because we were sick of liaising with web developers 11 years ago, right? Because people were having such bad experiences. They were like, can you do it? We were like, well, we don't do it, we can do it. It's exactly how our business started up, really. So you're solving that problem fundamentally, aren't you? Which is a problem I think everybody acknowledges. It's not something you must have to educate clients on. They must be well aware that these are the views, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think because I've been agency side before, as well as freelance, I can totally empathise with the pain in the neck that comes with trying to find freelancers. I mean, recruitment and capacity has to be top 3 pain points of all agencies out there, really, with cash flow, sales and revenue, and then people being the real mission critical things that keep agency owners up at night. So I think we're trying to, I think the usual port of call for agencies or people when they need that extra pair of hands is to go, oh God, we need an extra pair of hands. Let's panic. Let's put a shout out on LinkedIn. Let's get inundated by everybody under the sun. There might be one or two in there that are great. It's a minefield to navigate. Get someone in who we don't know or who's been referred and we've not actually worked with. Not sure if we're going to gel. Not sure if the chemistry's there. Not sure if they really know their channel as well as they say they are. And it's all a bit of an unknown. So I think because we understand, everyone in the community being ex-agency understands the pressure and the level of pressure that agency owners are under and agency teams. So by extracting that pain point of A, finding the freelancers, and B, doing that due diligence and the vetting, not just from a channel expertise perspective, but from a cultural perspective as well. And what I mean by that is that the ex-agency freelancers have this pre-programmed understanding of agency language, how to articulate their channel to lots of different stakeholders, how to work in agency processes and pitch processes and everything else that goes with agency life, so that ideally when agencies do have that need, they don't just get someone who's great at their role, but they get someone who has that agency understanding so they can sit alongside their team members in clients' situations and just crack on without having to have all of that rigmarole of onboarding and getting to know everything and everyone.
Something that we've spoken about on the podcast before, certainly the pros and cons of a post-social digital environment, and something like community management, which I think is as I've reflected on your business, is a space you've moved into, and one that was never spoken about 10 years ago, but actually there's a lot of great jobs in community management, and there's a lot to do in community management. Was there a particular moment that you thought, actually, this is a good route for me? Had you done a lot of community management before? Because it's a big thing to take on, isn't it? Sort of helping freelancers who are always looking for how can I promote myself and get the next best contract. To be able to take that on is a big responsibility. Was there anything sort of from your background that led you to community management in particular here?
No. Nothing. I did very little of that in the past, but what I did love and what I feel I can try and help, and a lot of the other freelancers in the community helping each other can help with it, is having that sales background in agency life. So a real big stickler for people who go from agency to freelance, who have been in, say, more of a delivery role, so say a head of SEO or a content writer or whatever their discipline might be. They may have been exposed to pitch environments, and they may not actually in some instances, but there's a very big and stark difference between pitching yourself, creating your own creds decks, promoting yourself, and then actually closing the deal, winning the deal, doing the work and invoicing, to sitting within the four walls of a cozy agency whereby you have a sales team bringing you the business, you have an accounts team doing your invoicing, you have a legal team helping you with contracts. So where we don't offer kind of not legal, we don't offer legal advice or accountancy advice as such, but where we can help is that I've obviously been a freelancer myself, I've been a salesperson myself. That generates a certain amount of thick skin and a certain amount of knowledge of how to say certain words and nuance what you do to help close deals, but then give you the confidence that you can execute them as well. So part of that community management and liaising with our communities is giving that people the confidence to be able to sell themselves and not cringe and not feel like, oh, I don't justify being in this position or whatever it might be. Just helping them tweak their language and their decks to sell themselves, so that when they do transition into freelance, they know that they can have those conversations from a commercial perspective as well as a channel expert perspective. And I think that's what gives us the edge with our community management, as opposed to just purely being that person to kind of chat to on a day-to-day scenario.
Yeah, and you mentioned your rigorous vetting process there, and I think that's a key part of community management, isn't it? Is that actually, if you are doing community management well, you have to accept and put in rules that mean that some people can come, some people can't. I know you have an invite-only application process as well. Would you like to just tell our listeners about what you consider essential for brands, agencies and freelancers who approach you? What is it you are looking for in an interim digital partner?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one we get asked a lot, because you can't pay to be part of the community, because it is about kind of that cultural fit, which I'll go into a sec. But in terms of bare minimum, it's a minimum of 5 years experience and ex-agency. Those are the two main credentials that we look at. We only have, I think it's one community member who isn't ex-agency, but they are ex-very large brand. So they've worked as a head of e-commerce for a large brand, acted as that kind of go-between between the agency and the brand. So that they're a very minor exception to the rule, but generally it's minimum 5 years, all ex-agency. So those are the on-paper creds that we look for. But the real thing for us, and the hardest thing to find when you're agency side, is people who are channel experts but also really commercially aware. So take, for instance, an SEOer who's devising a strategy for a client. There are certain ways and best practices that you can go about SEO. And yes, it's subjective, but fundamentally a lot of the principles are the same for every SEOer out there. The people that we're looking for are the ones who can devise those strategies, but then align them to specific commercial goals for our clients, so that our agency clients and then their clients can see what they can expect to get back from those particular strategies. And once those strategies have been executed, seeing them right through, understanding what's working, what's not working, and having those conversations to say, this is what we've tried, this is why we've tried it, it's worked here really well, it hasn't worked here as well, and being able to switch, flex, change, and have those anecdotal and challenging conversations, but with that level of channel expertise as well. So when you marry those two character attributes together, you have a very powerful individual and a very attractive freelancer, for a very attractive full-time position as well, to be fair. That's why all agencies are trying to find people like this, and why we're trying to find them for them. But I think when you combine those two together, you have a very, very strong offering that will help you stand out from the rest of the freelancer crowd.
And where do you find this? This is the key question. Where do you find these attractive freelancers? Because I'm sure that's going to be the question in the minds. Because I suppose in a traditional setting with a recruitment agency, let's say, they will be subscribed to the jobs databases. They will then send those on. It's always seemed like an incredibly inefficient method to me, Ginny, which is why I'm delighted you're disrupting it. Of here are 20 CVs. This is someone who we already know doesn't have time, the hiring manager. They're probably also managing people as well as doing this as a part of their job that they probably feel they don't get paid for, right? Getting into the agency politics, no doubt we'll get into that.
Yeah, let's not go down that. That's a whole other episode.
Perspective. It's a whole other episode, right? But where do you fish for these very attractive freelancers? Because it's obviously something that will get quite competitive, right? I think people try to find the best of the best, the cream of the crop.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were very lucky in the early days. There was just a small group of us who were working together on interim briefs. And what you find within our digital world is, even though it appears quite big, on paper, actually in reality, there's a lot of people who know a lot of people who are at similar points in their career. So I was in agencies for 9-10 years before I went freelance. So a lot of my friends and peer sets who are still agency side are now at the level of head of, director of, etc., etc. And equally, the people who I grew up with in agency world who have gone freelance are now of the caliber of the types of people that we'd want in the community. So it grew relatively organically to start with. And what we really encourage freelancers to do is then, and members of our community to do, is to then refer in their friends and peers who they rate to. So the referral systems worked really well, and we incentivize our community members to send referrals our way. So that's one route which has worked really well. Another route is to just go out there and literally mine LinkedIn and do the grunt work that not a lot of people are willing to do. And we do that grunt work before we have live briefs to work on. So I guess the biggest difference you're referring to, Chris, is whereby people get briefs in, or recruit, kind of the traditional recruitment route is get the job spec in and then go and find the people. So what we're trying to do is find the people so that when we get the specs and the briefs and the projects in, we've got them in the back pocket ready to go. And we literally do approach them, and some of them I think just are blankers because they think we're some form of scam, which is fine. That's probably on me actually to work on our outreach strategy. And the others that we do engage with, we just have vetting calls with, pop them into the community, and they might not work on a brief for 3, 6, 9 months, but we've got that contact there. So when the right brief does come, we know we've got that pre-existing relationship. And I think because we've taken that proactive find the people and then the briefs kind of approach, combined with the marketers looking for marketers as opposed to recruiters looking for candidates route, those two combined have made it a really powerful pool of individuals who we know can carry out the briefs that our clients are looking for. And I think, not to give away our secret sauce, but I think that's probably our secret sauce.
I'm pleased you mentioned referrals, actually, because I'm surprised in other podcasts, particularly on the marketing-specific ones where we've taken a look at SEO and other aspects of marketing. We did one for email with Maria the other day. Something we've not actually touched on is referrals, but a sign of a great community and a strong community is that you have got referrals going. And I would argue in our business world now, where branding has become so important again, community is so important, social reputation is so important for the search engines, then actually referrals always does need a massive focus. And if you nail referrals, then actually you can save so much money on your marketing because you have that flywheel where you can get enough momentum into your organic referral word of mouth that actually you don't need to spend a lot of money on other marketing channels. Is that something you've found, Ginny, as you've been building this business? You've not actually had to put much money in for traditional marketing or anything like that?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly with the freelance, building the community, without doubt, referrals has been massive, and building business and revenue, 100% great as well. And the beauty of working with agencies is that once we kind of gain their confidence and gain their trust and show them that partnering with, or prove to them, show sounds really patronizing, but prove to them that by partnering with us they can scale quickly and with expertise, we gain a level of trust that enables us to work across other accounts within that agency. So we might have one client by having an agency client, but within that client we might have 4, 5, 6 accounts that we can work across. So by osmosis and pushing several freelancers into one agency, you've got this lovely little ecosystem of brilliant partners who within the agency itself, they're referring us to other accounts. So the AD on one account might go to another AD on another account who's not heard of us because they didn't know we were even working with them, to say, oh, did you know Interim are actually supporting on social on here, so they might have someone in content. And we find naturally we start to kind of eke out a little bit of a web within our clients, and they start to internally refer us as well as externally, which is really nice and very reassuring that internally they're willing to refer us to each other. Yeah, it's great.
One of the benefits that I imagine comes from these types of relationships would be around the commercial pricing. And of course, the old traditional recruiter models, for those who don't know, often you would get money for placing a candidate. You would often get money in the form of they have been there for a certain amount of time. Again, another sort of side of the industry that was probably ripe for disruption. So quite keen to hear from you just in general terms, how the agreement looks like commercially between yourself and sort of the agencies and the other side with freelancers. Because obviously a problem you are solving is that agencies don't need to find these clients, spend all that time, spend money trying to find these people, directly liaise with them because you've already built that relationship, Ginny. I just wondered if you could talk our listeners, so I think that will make it more real for them in terms of where you sit in the process and how you deal commercially either side.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, one we get a lot. So we've approached this whole I've approached Interim, this whole business, from agency side. So I've never been a recruiter. I don't understand the process of recruitment. It's just not a field that I've ever operated in. So having come at it from agency side, we've tried to create our commercials to knit into agencies, so that, again, working with us, it keeps it super easy to understand and super transparent. So I don't charge finding fees because I'd never heard of that, because I'm not a recruiter, I'm a marketer. I don't charge fees for people being in there for longer or shorter, because that's not what we do in agency life. We charge day rates in agency life, and we charge day rates scalable depending on where people sit in the hierarchy of their position within their channel within agency. So I've tried to map everything to be agency relatable. So we have a set day rate that we charge per freelancer. There's no introduction fees and there's no exit fees, things like that. It's literally, we've tried to market it to a point whereby our freelancers still get their day rate, we get a bit in the middle, and then the agencies still have room to make a margin on our day rates. So we've approached it from a very commercially driven perspective to make sure that agencies have the bandwidth in our day rates to work with us. Because what you find with a lot of, some freelancers is they'll price themselves out of being able to work with agencies, because agencies have their own day rates as well, and they have to make their margins as well as service their own clients. So by dropping down slightly so that we've got that bandwidth to be able to fit into agency commercial models and also pay our freelancers really well, is how we've tried to market ourselves. And so far, having that marketer's approach seems to be resonating quite well.
It's such a great lesson for our younger, more aspiring entrepreneurs who probably, no doubt from this conversation, will say, actually, I'd like to be an interim digital freelancer. But actually, you don't have to sit with the status quo on these models. And a lot of these systems, these historic systems, have been there, and actually a great thing to do with a young inquisitive mind, or an old inquisitive mind, is not to be scared to ask why things happen, right? Not to be scared to say, this finder's fee doesn't really make sense to me. And actually, from an agency perspective, it's prohibitive, or you are limiting the amount of business you can do by operating in this way. Of course, recruitment as an industry, I mean, it must be absolutely historic. I'd hate to put a date on it. I was trying to talk about Dickensian times in my last podcast, but I don't think I dare risk sort of giving an era for it, right? But people have always needed people to recruit. So actually, just because someone has not done it in that way, you don't always have to be reinventing the wheel. You can just be changing a model quite slightly that makes it far better for everyone, and that can be a great business in itself. Ginny, was that how? Did you come at it with that absolutely a blank slate? Obviously the agency side, so you were naturally going to hit on things that help the agency side more. Did you also sort of take freelancer feedback, and has your model evolved over time? Have you found that you've adapted your pricing because there's been better ways to do it, or your terms because there's been better ways you've found doing it in the it's the classic about the plan, surviving the first punch in the face sort of scenario. As soon as you're actually in the ground, it feels very different, and you have to be adaptable and change, don't you? So did you find you were making any sort of quick changes early on that have helped the business grow?
Yeah, I think because we had a very intense start to the first few months that we went kind of live in this model, it was like you talked about punching in the face. It felt a bit like a few rounds with Mike Tyson by the end of the first few months, which I'm sure a lot of new business owners could relate to. And that forced me and forced us as a community into refining processes, refining commercial models, working out percentages, margin percentages that fit with the types of clients that we work with, so that they are getting value and that we're getting value and that the freelancers are getting value. So whilst it was a baptism by fire, it was perfect for what we needed. So actually since then, we haven't really changed a lot in terms of how we operate commercially, because I think there's also a temptation to overcomplicate stuff. And I think that's maybe why we've accidentally, we never set out with the intention of kind of this recruitment path. And I love recruiters. Like I've had, my last role was through an incredible recruiter, really good friend of mine, and he's so good at his job. And recruiters are brilliant. And the picture we try and paint is that we're not here to kind of compete with recruiters, because what we do is allow our agency clients to just breathe for a minute whilst they're recruiting. So we come in and relieve pressure, let them know that stuff is happening in the background. Their clients are being serviced, their channels are being supported, their internal teams are being mentored, so that they can focus on long-term recruitment. Because that's not what we're there for. We're there to plug a gap and leave the agency in a better position than it was before we got in there, whilst the recruiters and the recruitment teams are working in the background to fill those roles permanently. So yeah, I think coming at it from a marketeer's background, but with a knowledge that we're not a forever solution, is what's helped simplify our processes and keep them relatively straightforward.
And you are that perfect interim solution, right? That's made me think about, it's a great way to describe it, because actually you are part of the same sort of process, but you are actually not competing very well in the ways you say. And actually, I have the same view with recruiters. I've met a lot of great recruiters, actually. I think recruiters unfairly get punched down on in a lot of aspects. Some of the best salespeople I know, some of the most resilient people I know, some of the bravest people I know, and often, and we're starting to see that now, right? With digital, I suppose it was quite easy to become a freelancer because you were probably remote. You probably have skills that the wider business, as long as you could collaborate and communicate with, would appreciate, but you didn't necessarily need to be sat in the office. You know, if you're a web developer or whatever, you don't necessarily need to be sat in the office, do you? Did you, from an interim perspective, did the name come out of, was it a dream that you had, or had you been talking about it? I wonder if there is a name like Interim we can have as the brand, and then you've searched and found, the .digital is available. Shall I go for that? It does seem like a perfect name for what you are offering, which I suppose loads of people go their whole lives trying to create a business but can never get the .co.uk or something that they think fits right for their brand, Ginny. How did you hit on Interim?
So bizarrely, it was actually what I chose years ago when I went freelance as an individual. So it was like the limited company name that we just came up with years ago. But when we first launched, someone had actually taken the Interim Digital.co.uk. So we had this horrendous Interim Digital Ltd.co.uk, really clunky, really rubbish. So when it came to the point of Interim now in its current guise, it was like, right, that's a really great opportunity to understand what it is that we're niching down in. So we will stay within digital marketing. So .digital seemed right. And again, to have that Interim Digital.co.uk still unavailable, take out the LTD, it's a bit old school and a bit clunky. So it just seemed to roll nicely off the domain name tongue, so to speak. And it does what it says on the tin. You know, I think we've chatted before about how important brand is, and brand messaging, etc. And there's some incredibly creative names in my world, or our world, in digital marketing. You know, the purple unicorns and the pink starfish and whatever else is out there. But our name is boring, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. So it's our job basically to make sure that the branding's pretty fun, represents who we are in terms of really fun and down-to-earth people, but very good at what we do, combined with that interim notion.
And so if I'm a freelancer then, Ginny, listening to this podcast, very much understanding the interim message, I like the brand, it's very clear what you do to me. How would you say, can we get some sort of tips on how I should present myself to Interim Digital. As you mentioned, the invite only, I think, is quite interesting. It'd be good to understand how that happens, because I think people will aspire to want to do that from this podcast. But equally, what sort of skills, what kind of soft skills are you looking for? Clearly, technical expertise is always being looked for. You're probably trying to recruit the new Wizard of Moz or someone similar for the Gen Z to aspire to, right?
Wizard of
Whereas
Moz, yeah.
If I am now looking, I want to be one of these fabulous established freelancers who Ginny is placing in fantastic brands and agencies. What sort of soft skills would you tell me to brush up on so that I'm the best version of myself for my Interim Digital interview?
That's nice. I like that. It's really, we try and keep it as simple and as basic as possible, really. And that is literally to just make sure you are as easy to work with as is physically possible. You know, client service runs through our veins at Interim. It runs through my veins. It is like A star, number one priority before anything else. So as long as you're astute with communication, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Be willing to admit when you don't know. You know, it can be a really scary situation if someone raises a question within your channel and you don't know the question, because I have 100% done this several times when I started out in my career and gone, oh yeah, definitely, of course we can do that, and you get nervous and by and large you're wrong. So to have the confidence to say, do you know what, actually I'm not too sure on that, but I know someone who will know that answer and take it away and get the answers you need. And we had an ex-CEO that I used to work with who absolutely incredible, and his mantra for his agency was when I'm interviewing someone, if I feel like I'd quite like them to come around to my house for Sunday lunch, then I'm kind of happy that they'll be right for the agency. And that's kind of stuck with me forever, because it's like, if you'd be happy to go for a drink with someone or to sit in a restaurant or go for a walk and have a coffee and chat about stuff on a one-to-one level, they don't have to be yes men, just conversational, know their stuff really well, then they're the kind of folk that resonate really well with agencies and resonate really well with brands. And that is exactly what we're looking for, over kind of being super hot on the latest SEO release. Obviously really great to have that too, but I'll take the personable Sunday lunch folk over that.
It's so important, isn't it? Having an enjoyable vibe. It's actually not spoken about as much. I think people just assume that if you get to a certain seniority or you're working in certain businesses, and I think probably sector to sector there is, a slight difference of, you have to be maybe more of an effervescent personality, more gregarious personality, depending on where you are in the food chain, and also sort of what sector you are in. People are going to have different expectations around that. But that resonates with me. It was always something that I cared about with teams that I worked in, that everyone was trying to be adaptable in their communications, trying to communicate to people in the right way. Because for many years I was a bridge between marketing and digital technology teams, and so often they would come to loggerheads, or they would come to confusions or areas where they couldn't progress because they weren't speaking the same language, actually. And sometimes you do need someone, no doubt why you have the senior freelancers, who can unblock those types of issues that actually you can get quite bogged down into.
Totally.
So it makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's going to be, if I was taking it from the other angle now and just sort of saying, obviously it's become very, I don't want to say trendy. Trendy is not the right word, but there is a lot of freelancers these days. Right? It's become a very popular, self-employment's very popular. There's a lot of tools and things so that you can become a freelancer if you wish to these days. Is there any moments where you think, and what are freelancers or people thinking about becoming freelance should consider before they take that jump, Ginny? Is there anything you've seen from your experience where you've thought, actually, this person may have benefited more from being in an agency environment a bit longer, being with that brand a bit longer than trying to go freelance now? Is there any sort of advice and tips you'd be able to give our aspiring freelancers?
Yeah, I would say, and I bang this drum a lot, and it's personal opinion, but I don't think you should consider going freelance without going agency side first in our industry, in digital marketing, or brand side, but a big brand or somewhere where you are liaising with agencies, being in that e-commerce ecosystem or that digital marketing ecosystem, digital ecosystem as a whole. And the reason being is that agency life is intense and it's brilliant, and you are exposed to so many different channels, so many different people, so many different verticals, markets, niches. It really enables you to not only pick the discipline that you really enjoy, but the vertical that you really enjoy. So we might have, or we have some freelancers in the community who love PR, but love to specialise in B2B PR because they've had the opportunity to test and learn themselves in agency life. We have people who love SEO, but particularly love technical SEO. We have people who love technical SEO, but also love content strategy for retail. All of these nuances within each of the channels that there exist. And the only reason they know that they love those bits and pieces is because they've been exposed to them because of agency life. So from a channel perspective, you get so much opportunity to try everything, which is kind of the one main reason. The second reason is within agency life as well, you get exposed to all of the other teams there. So what you learn from those other teams, like down to the basics of when to invoice, and why would you raise it? How do you raise an invoice? How do you bill? Like, how do you bill your projects? How do you check? What should payment terms be? Through to the HR team, through to the sales team. So how do salespeople even outreach? What do they do to qualify leads? Like, how do they approach a pitch deck? How do they interpret a tender? All of these things that you're absorbing almost subconsciously just by being in an agency environment are so valuable that when you go freelance, you can start to pull on them. Even when we kind of developed Interim, everything that we have, from paperwork to processes to people, there's elements of all agencies that I've worked at in that, without doubt, from the good and the bad. I've seen agencies organise stuff really badly. So when I've been doing our processes, thinking, right, I don't want to do what they did, but they were really good at that bit, and try to create this kind of hodgepodge of the best bits of all of the agencies that I've worked at to create something a bit more efficient. So yeah, I would say there's so much value that you can get without even realising it from agency life, which is why it's really important.
Yeah, I'd very much echo those sentiments, and you kind of become quite organically the product of all your good and all your bad experiences.
Definitely.
And actually, when you do take plunge, and I would say this from my own experience setting up my own business, there have been times over the sort of 11 years that it's been that I have thought, oh, actually, if I just got a bit more experience here or there, a very reflective thing, because often when you make these decisions, you're doing it for a good reason, and if you're quite self-aware or self-reflective, you'll probably be aware, right, I could probably have done with another couple of hours, another couple of years of getting more people on board who knew how good you are at certain things, right? Because that does just help you on your way. So you do find that, and a lot of business owners, I think, reflect on that of I could have been, if I had been more active or got into more environments, I think I could have done different things from there. And I think it's always a learning experience along the way. Have you got any examples of people you've placed? Obviously, you've been going 3 years now, so reasonably early in your journey, but one that you've obviously seen successes on and absolutely want to continue with your business. Has there been freelancers that you've placed with certain agencies or brands where they've got on really well, or they've created something special and you've had a thank you card? Hopefully there's still thank you cards for people who help in these scenarios, right? Anything like that where you've really helped someone in a situation that resonated with you, Ginny, in particular?
Yeah, I think what really reassures me that we're on to something special is when agencies partner with freelancers in ways that they'd never thought of before, because we've helped generate that type of relationship. And we've chatted about before, the purpose and the mission of Interim is for when a freelancer leaves, we leave that agency or brand in a better position than it was when we landed. And not saying that they're all in like a critical position, but you know what I mean. We like to add value as well as deliver on a channel. And there's been instances whereby, a couple of instances in particular, whereby an agency's head of department has moved on. So whether that be head of PR or head of SEO, and they're left with a bit of a gap in terms of a senior level person, but then also a layer of executives who require and rely on that mentorship to get them up the kind of the corporate ladder and up the channel ladder. Now, we've used some of our, or partnered with some of our cracking freelancers to go into those agencies' kind of head of roles and split their time between hands-on delivery, getting work out of the door and making sure clients are serviced in the correct way, but also developing that agency's team of execs so that when the new head of does join full-time, those execs are a layer up or a rung up the knowledge ladder by the time that person gets in. And then as like a secret option number 3 as well that they bring is that they can actually sit alongside the senior leadership team of those agencies and help them refine what it is that they want from that next full-time hire. So having done it themselves when they were agency side, they can now help do things like review job specs, look at salary expectations. Is it in line? Do they, is that what people on the other side looking for jobs would expect? Sit alongside the senior leadership teams in interviews, because a head of client services interviewing for a head of SEO is like me trying to hire a lawyer or an accountant. Like, I wouldn't know a good accountant from a dreadful one, because that's not my area of expertise. So why do we expect a head of client services to know if a future head of SEO is any good? So it's when someone develops and helps bring on a whole department within an agency from a freelancer consultative perspective, that makes me think that's brill. That's exactly what we're here for, and it's why we're a little bit special and why our community are as kind of as valuable as they are.
And if I'm gazing into the Palantir, the crystal ball for Interim Digital for the future, and it's impossible to predict in digital what's going to happen tomorrow usually. But obviously you're making great progress and have great momentum. What does the future look like from here for you for Interim Digital? Is it something that you think about a lot? Are you still in a stage where you're letting it grow quite organically and in whatever direction it chooses to? Or do you have a plan put together for, say, the next 3 to 5 years, and what might that entail?
Yeah, so vision-wise, that the biggest mission is to be the preferred partner for every agency in the UK for freelance support. That's like the big hitter end goal dream. We work with a handful of brilliant clients, but there are 24,000 digital agencies in the UK, and I'm very aware of the fact that as we were chatting about at the top of the call, it's quite trendy to be freelance at the moment. It's quite new for agencies to want to work with freelancers. So there will be ebbs and flows in the freelance market. And what I don't want to do is get us to the point where we're completely reliant on a really fine-tuned customer base. So the big focus for us over the next few years is to make sure we're in front of the cream of the crop of those 24,000 digital agencies in the UK, so that people know that we exist. Because the critical thing with us is people don't need us until they really need us. And they've gone down the avenue of trying to recruit, and it maybe hasn't happened as quick as they wanted it to, or they've lost someone unexpectedly because of sick leave, or all of these different variables that could happen unexpectedly. And if they don't know we exist, we can't support. So really, it's a big brand awareness piece for the next or kind of foreseeable future, in a nice organic way, and continue with the referrals and building our relationships with our existing customer base, because I'm also very aware that what we offer is refined in terms of the people. So what I don't want to do is grow at a rapid rate and us lose that level of magic that the freelancers bring. So it needs to be quite an organic growth, but one in a definite upward trend would be ideal.
An upward trend. That's what we're all aiming for.
Yeah.
Absolutely the best of luck with it. I think you bring us nicely enough. It's a great place for us to leave it, but I can't quite let you go yet until you answer our last question that we ask everybody on the Bear Business podcast. Your choice can be a video game, dice game, garden game, game in the dark, a game in the middle of the day. It depends what you like. What would you say your favourite game is, Ginny?
It's got to be backgammon. Easy. Backgammon through and through. I come from a slightly unhealthily competitive family, should I say. 3 brothers and a mum who's unbelievably good at backgammon, a dad who's really good at backgammon. He gets really sour when he loses. And unfortunately, I've taught my husband to play as well, and he's also really good. So, it's a competitive time in the Nicholls, Deacon Elliott household when the backgammon board comes out.
Known as a casual board game, but it certainly doesn't sound like a casual game at your house. Do you have tournaments? How structured are you in your backgammon games? Are there people sneaking out after dinner with a bottle of wine to have a quick game to brush up so that they can beat the others at another point? It makes sense. We should have a family trophy for you for backgammon with that sort of competitiveness. Any tournaments, annual tournaments, or just on a Sunday afternoon after a port or a... don't say cigars anymore, do we? After just
sounds quite nice to be
these days.
It tends to be a Sunday afternoon kind of wintry afternoon type affair, or on holiday, and it depends which brothers are around at the time. But one of my brothers is particularly good at cheating, so I try to avoid playing him. But but with all of the others, it's as and when we can. But it's good fun, but it's competitive, and it's quite strategic, but also with a sprinkling of luck, which is why I think I really enjoy it.
It sure is. And why is there always one that cheats? And why is it always the older brother? On that note, Ginny, thank you very much for your time today. Yeah. Thank you for spending your time with us and your insights. I think invaluable. We obviously have a lot of freelancers, quite a few agencies, and certainly some brands who listen to us. So no doubt they'll be in touch. I will leave in the show notes links to your social media profiles so people can follow you, come and ask you questions, come and challenge you to a game of backgammon. Thank you ever so much for being with us today.
No worries. Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been great fun.